Okay, okay, I guess we're live. So wake up, everyone. Good morning and good evening. Sunday night for you guys. Okay. Yeah, everyone's here. Showing up, sort of. Ah, is this working? Yeah. Good morning. Yeah, okay, we're all here. Good morning. Even Naladi's here. I'm sure I can hear her somewhere. Somewhere. Anyway, let's get this working. Uh okay. So wake up. Sunday Night Live, Planet Earth. And we're all still here. So what's coming up? What's coming up? You all know what's coming up because I don't. But I'm afraid I have a feeling about what's coming up. Anyway, so there's a election in. I mean, a selection. I'm sorry, a selection in the U.S. and coming up. So there should be something big just before that. Anyway, I wanted to wait a minute, get right into it today. There we go. Okay. Because I never get to answer questions, right? I don't ever answer enough questions, and that's usually a bummer. So, and we have this one here. I almost know what I'm doing. Almost. Go here. Go away. Go away. Okay. And go away. Okay. Very good. Perfect. Here we are. Now, so, ow. Anyway, just a reminder to everybody that the Parasite group, I mean, the groups are happening, all three of them. And the there's the health and healing, which we do. We're just going to talk about. We only talk about things like diet, fasting, and things that have to do with health, sleep. We're going to talk about all the necessities of sleep, and it's not going to be focused on any particular manifestation of toxicity. And just as I think as an important reminder to us all the time to keep remembering, because I listen when because I now we have private groups, right? We have our Telegram chat groups. So if you're in CFC group, we've got a chat group. If you're in the Parasite group, we have a chat group. And if you're in Health and Healing, we have a chat group. Although no one said anything from there, but anyway, and I'm seeing that everybody's still using the same language. They're still okay. Yeah, people are saying CFCs. We all know chronically fermenting cells are what really is this ridiculous thing that we have an astrological sign of Cancer, Sagittarius. It's so ridiculous. And it means nothing. The word what you have going on, if you have that problem, is chronically fermenting cells. Period. Okay. So like you're getting that, but what you're not getting is the rest of the language. Because you have to understand, if you use their language, you are in their video game. They made the video game, and they know how to win it. They will win it. Can't be in their video game. Get out of their video game. Okay, their video game precludes inductive reasoning. You won't be able. What does that mean? That means creative thought. There's no induction. It's all deduction. Yeah, based on assumptions that they have established, based on their assumptions. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about when you use the word disease. Don't use it. There is no, there are those. And don't say NED. What does that mean? What does NED mean? It means no, in this particular context, it means no evidence of disease. Well, there never was because there is no disease. So what are we talking about? Just can't use their words. I don't know how do I. I'm gonna have to. figure this out? How do I convince people, or let you, convey to you the power of words? Beyond power, they are everything. Yeah, they're everything. Um, they're not everything, but they're everything to us. To our world, comes through words. We see things because we've identified them as such. We put a name on them. If you don't have a name for things and you don't see them as distinct, distinct from other things, you won't see them. But anyway, so, and is this good against? Can I take this against CFC? So you use the word CFC, the acronym CFC, but you didn't say against. What do you against? We're not going against. We're not going to war. This is not a military battle. We're not trying to get rid of anything. What we're trying to do is restore balance and physiological integrity. We want to restore that health. Then there's no CFCs, there's no insomnia, there's no depression, there's no gastritis, right? There's none of that stuff. So we're not on that journey of, is this good against that? No. Well, I got to get rid of no, you don't have, you can't have diabetes because there is no diabetes. Where is it? What does it look like? If I have diabetes, is part of it in my elbow, or is it all in my, where is it all my cells? Okay. It's in my cells. They got there, right? There's no, if you just think about the way we're talking, okay. But you really have to change the way you talk. And because that'll change the way you think. That will change the way you think, because our thoughts are the scaffolding of our mind. Anyway, so we do the CFCs, and the CFCs, Parasite, and Health and Healing. And yeah, so this week coming up, Health and Healing, we're going to talk about what is the best detox, how long, and how frequent. What is the best? And for the CFC group this week, no, that was, yeah. And then for the CFC group this week, we're going to talk about CFC stem cells, because they're kind of important, right? So that'll be kind of the focus, but you can ask anything you want. Anyway, so, and I think for a lot of your personal concerns, we're able to discuss it in that format, okay? Because it works better than here, because this is just for everybody, for everything. Okay, got that. Okay, so now, and remember, on Twitter, it's Dr. Thomas Lodi, MD, and then which means mythology doctor, right? So mythology doctor. But Dr. Thomas Lodi, MD, on Twitter, X, whatever it is, and then all the other ones: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. It's all Dr. Thomas Lodi, Dr. Thomas. Okay. And remember, for some reason, it doesn't like me, right? Doesn't like me, and they're gonna squash me someday soon. So go to these other ones and rumble. Okay. All right, good. So now, questions are here. This is from Valerie, and my question is related to Accutane. My son is 22, old enough to make his own decisions. He has been dealing with acne on his face and back since 16. He's tried many natural remedies to get rid of acne. Okay, so we'll kind of work on this, the language here. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the acne. He also has modified his diet greatly for years and watches everything he eats so he does not trigger a flare-up. Okay. He was told that he also has a mild overlay of rosacea. So see, they've already told you what you are. This is what you are. You've got rosacea, and you've got acne's clear. You can see where it is. but and rosacea. But they put a name on what? Why is the question is what's going on? Why is it coming up? What's going on? Instead of we're going to how do we get rid of it, and how do we get rid of the rosacea? We're going wait. Well, how to get what's going on? What's happening? What's my body saying? Anyway, so clearly hormones are part of the acne problem. But now that he's 22, he's frustrated, and nothing has worked despite great efforts. He's tried so many products. Anyway, so they went through the side effect profile, and he was Valerie's terrified, but he thinks they're not that bad. It's worth it. He wants to start with low dose and work his way up for his weight and keep him on a fix 6 to 8 months. They check his blood once a month. He's also happy about not having to watch his diet as carefully as he does. All right, so you see that's the Western. You see, sadly, Valerie, your son, and you're even using the same language, and everybody is using their language in their world. You can't win. You can't be happy with these people. Okay, so here, so if he can find the right weapon, now he can go back to he can go eat anything he wants. So that's so you understand what so. When we understand that all conditions of our body that are causing us to be less than optimal in any way, physically, whether we're low on energy, whether we've got things growing in us and out of us, or whatever's our moods are always pessimistic and anything like that, depression, all that. It's always because always, not most of the time, not 99.9%, always due to an accumulated toxicity. Okay, and as this toxicity accumulates, it starts to cause dysfunction in the cells that it's accumulating. I mean, it's not in the cell. Yeah, a lot of it is, but most of it is like in the fluid around it and in the tissues like that. So it causes anyway, it causes dysfunction. Just tell them the usual. All right, so it causes all the tissues and cells to. So basically, okay, here's a liver cell trying to be a liver cell. It's a good liver cell. It's doing liver stuff, but now it's getting there's more and more toxins around it. So now it is got to deal with that, right? So the toxins are there, and they are interfering with its ability to pick up signals from the blood sugar appropriately to know, or glycogen. The glycogen is not bonding as much because, or the whatever is not binding, and it's not picking it up because there's too much toxicity, and it's trying to protect itself. So now it starts to divert some of its energy from just being a liver, just doing liver stuff, to protecting itself from these toxins, right? And then soon that becomes even more pronounced, and eventually enough of the cells are so busy dealing with the toxins that the liver is not functioning properly. We start to see organ problems, whether it's kidney, heart, brain, doesn't matter. Now, when that happens to our endocrine organs, like our ovaries, our testes, thyroid, adrenal glands, pituitary glands, all the other different kidneys which produce erythropoietin. When it happens to that, then and the function of our endocrine organs and glands starts to go down, what do we see? A decline in hormones. And when you get a decline in hormones, then we see the phenomenon known as aging. All right, so even aging, okay, right? Because when you get to about whatever it is, 24, the brain is completely developed by 24, 25. Let's say, to be safe, 28. you're done. Okay. Now, pristine health, living in not accumulating toxins, you're not going to, maybe in 100 years you might start to accumulate it. In other words, it doesn't have to be this way, but it is. So here we go. Okay, so now, so here's what he doesn't realize. Your son doesn't realize, because okay, first of all, let's just talk about Accutane, right? Uh, basically, Accutane is uh, kind of a derivation of vitamin A, sort of, right? And vitamin A, right, for eyes and skin, right? You better vision like that. But so what it does is it goes in and it basically stimulates the cell to commit suicide. Apoptosis. We all know that cells die in certain ways. Cells can die because they get hammered by something in the environment, right? That's called cytotoxic, right? Cytology, and that's called necrosis. It just dies, and then you got all the remnants, right? The organelles inside, like the lysosomes, which have really strong enzymes, spilled out. Everything's just spilled out. That's necrosis. Or cells can die because the body is always turning over. Remember, the body is not a thing that happened to us one day when we were conceived, and then it kind of grew, and now here it is. No, the body is a happening. It's a happening. It's like a flame. You look across the room, from across the room, you look at a flame, and you'll say there's a thing there called a flame. A thing, right? So in English, if you use what is it? A particle, yeah. A thing, the thing, an apple. Those are particles that tell you about. It's a noun. It's a noun. It's a thing. Okay, so meaning static, person, place, or thing, right? Anyway, you get up close to that flame. What do you see? Streaming gases. You don't see a thing. You see a process. That's where we are a process at the rate of 37. That's the lowest estimate you can come up with is 37 sextillion, 21 zeros, chemical reactions every second. As part of the result of that is about 37 million new cells per second. 37 million two cells per second. Okay, so that's how we're a process. So what you were last week is not what you are this week. And if you are the same, that means what's the good news about that? The good news is this, is that, remember, what are cells doing? Cells are living in this interstitial fluid. That's where they live. All right. They don't live in the blood. The blood, when it gets to the capillaries, diffuses back and forth. Everything except what doesn't come out of the blood are the red blood cells, right? And there are, and cells don't come out. The white blood cells, the platelets, and all that. Now there are white blood cells that are in the tissues because they're called tissue macrophages, and that's their job, and they're different than I'm talking about. Normally they don't come out. So nothing comes across the capillary except liquid. So we call this serum. We call it plasma. It's when you get your blood, if you had your blood taken and they spin it, and then you see at the top you have some this foamy stuff. That's your white blood cells and stuff like that. Your platelet, your fibrin, and things like that. Anyway, and then the clear part. So this clear part diffuses over, and with all of all the hormones and nutrients and gases, oxygen, and everything that's the waste, carbon dioxide, things like that is going back the other way. All the other waste is going back in, and it travels out through the veins and the lymphatics. But all that's surrounding the cells is this fluid, and it's and there's so many electrolytes and proteins and stuff like that it's really more like a crystalline matrix. It's more like it's not like, it wouldn't be like liquid in a cup. It's more it's more condensed. There's the molecules have charges and all that, so it's not like a liquid in the sense that we think of a liquid. But that's our serum. So when you look at it from our perspective, it looks like a liquid, right? But down in there, it's not. It's like full of stuff. All right. Anyway, so that's the fluid that our cells live in, and that's what they respond to, right? Okay, that's where they know. That's how the cells in the hypothalamus know that. Oh wow, we're running out of insulin. There's not enough insulin. How do they know that? Because it's not in the interstitial fluid that surrounds those cells. All cells, every cell is surrounded by, lives in this fluid. Okay, so then it will respond to that by producing something that will go to the what do you call it? I keep. Why is the word prostate coming in my mind? Go to the pituitary. Pituitary gland. The pituitary gland will then tell the ovaries to make estrogen, and that signal goes. Okay, okay. So you see what I'm saying is the point is the cells are responding to what's in their environment. So what else is in their environment besides the growth, the things they need for growth, like amino acids and glucose and fats and minerals. What else is in there? What else is in there? The waste that we haven't excreted, right? The effects of the inflammatory, what they call cytokines, or these molecules that stimulate inflammation, or anyway, damaging molecules, and waste, as well as everything the body produces and what we've eaten, drank, and what's coming through our skin, breathed, and what hasn't been eliminated. All that stuff is there. Okay, so that fluid determines what the cell's going to do. Guess what? That's where we come in, right? Not the guy in the white coat over there getting paid to put names on things putting a name on a process and saying it's a thing instead of a process. It's not a thing. It's a process. Okay, so if I have diabetes, I don't have diabetes. My body's being insulin resistant because I'm putting too much glucose. It's like too simple. All right. Now, so here in this case, acne, right? And so the again, that's a manifestation. So what happens in acne is that the sebaceous glands get they produce sebum. Sebum is kind of that. It's a waxy kind of substance that is produced, that it kind of covers our skin, right? And they actually are it's stimulated by androgens, male hormones, right? Testosterone and androstenedione and some of the other ones, DHEA. Okay, so they do that. So what happens is that this drug, Accutane, targets the sebaceous gland and causes them to commit suicide. So so remember we said there was necrosis, which is the death, just the death of a cell by trauma. Then there's apoptosis, where the cell turns over. Remember, we're turning over 37. We're recycling 37 million new cells per second and making new. So we're not just making new ones, otherwise we'd be really big by now, right? But no, instead we have to eliminate the ones. So that's why all cells have a certain lifespan. And so what the cell does is it's called apoptosis or apoptosis. It just recycles all of its stuff instead of letting it just turn into trash. So apoptosis, right? And then there's the other one we're now calling it ferroptosis, and we even have cuproctosis, which is copper. So we know there are other ways of cellular death, but those are mainly it. Anyway, so what the Accutane does is it stimulates, it's isotretinoin, right? So it's a part of it's similar to the vitamin A, right? So okay, that's one thing it does. But it also, what we now know is that it also, so as a result, since you wind up getting dried skin, dried mouth, you can get you can get really most like 80% of the people get it's called chelosis, where you get cracked lips and mouth and stuff like that, and you got to really oil your skin. And but what else do we see? We see problems with mental health, a lot of depression, even as far as psychosis, but a lot of depression, um, uh, and you know, inflammatory bowel, you know, pretty nasty stuff. Nose bleeds, eyes are dry. Okay, that's just normal. But the big ones are, how about Steven Johnson syndrome? That's like a life-threatening, uh, blisters and stuff all over your body. Yes, Steven Johnson syndrome. And you lose loss of appetite. The other big one, a couple big ones that I think are hair loss, and which is reversible for the most part. But it's, if you wind up getting the hair losses, you're not having a lot of fun at that point. Secondly, it messes with the hormones. It messes with LH and FSH, which are pituitary hormones that control fertility. That's why you can't get pregnant, and men shouldn't get women pregnant at that when they're taking this. And so it messes with your because the man is, if your LH is down, FSH is down, you just won't be producing enough sperm, healthy sperm. And the other thing is prolactin. It messes up prolactin, DHEA, which is the parent hormone of testosterone and estrogen. And what happens? Testosterone goes down. So men, 22 years, can get erectile dysfunction, loss of sexual desire, decreased libido. So it's like, whoa. It's like, okay. And what's interesting, and not interesting, but depression, inflammatory bowel, and ulcerative colitis are like account for 40%, over 40% of the side effects of the people get that. Wow, from taking it. So a lot of people stop taking it for that reason. And it also messes with thyroid hormone. So, so anyway, so what do we have? We have obstruction of the sebaceous glands because there's just too much stuff in there, and what's stimulating it is testosterone. Okay, what else is leading to it? Well, what do we know? What do we know? We know that the gut microbiota, by the way, just clarification of terms. When we say gut microbiome, we're actually talking about the genetics. Okay, the genetics. So if we wanted to know what is the human's genetics, well, we'd look at our genes. But since we actually have more microorganisms than we do cells in our body, there's more of them than us. So the question, and we can't live without them, just like we can't live without our heart, we can't live without our kidneys, we can't live without our liver, all right? And we can't live without them. So are they really them, or are they another? Do we have to redefine self? And that might be a good idea, is to redefine self, all right? Because they are part of us. But anyway, if you look at our biome, and because, by the way, our gut biome too also produces hormones and stuff that we need to live. So it's part of it's a unit of us. It's an aspect of us, all right? Now, so we know what influences it. What influences our gut microbiome? Well, what influences anything? Right? If you remember the two basic functions of all creatures on planet Earth, what are they? Eating and making babies. That's it. I mean, everything else is everything else, but that's it. I mean, we play, we go bowling too. And what else do we do? We go bowling and we fly airplanes. But I'm just saying, the basic two functions, that's the two pillars of basic activities. Because just think, survival, eating, what does that entail? That entails you building all the infrastructure we do and all of that. And then sexuality is another big part of our lives, but we don't talk about that, right? Unless you're how old? You got to be 18 to even think about it. Don't think about it. Don't talk about it. I mean, come on. This is not in mixed. Don't talk about that. We can talk about whether or not you're constipated. Well, we don't want to talk about that either. So, what are we going to talk about? What is okay to talk about? It's okay to talk about. Are you hungry? um, how's the weather, and you sleep okay, and right. But stuff's important. We're not gonna talk about it. Anyway, so the two basic functions of all life forms is that. So because eating is how we get our energy, and is how we get our replacement parts and all that. So um, that's why they're there. So whatever organisms are in your gut are there because you're feeding them, and it's the food they need. Okay, that's why they're there. That's why the ants are in the house. That's why the cockroaches in the house. That's why whatever you see anything anywhere, it's there because it's being fed. So you're feeding this. It didn't just. And we know that the Western diet has the Western diet has changed everything. Um, there, uh, there are considered two major events in uh, in history. Now we're talking about the paleoanthropologists, right? So the paleoanthropologists, when they look at skulls from 11,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, and they can see the dental plaque. The reason they can see dental plaque is because plaque it's a calcified biofilm. It's like it's not going anywhere. All right, it'll last thousands of years. So it's a good way to preserve biology. So it does. So when we look at the plaque, which is telling us the microorganisms that are in the mouth of 11,000 years ago, we can tell what they were. We know what they were. But we also notice that 11,000 years ago, they didn't lose their teeth. They had all their teeth. But starting about 10,000 years ago, they did start to lose their teeth and things. And when we look, and then we look at skulls, we look at the teeth and the plaque on humans after about 10,000 years ago, roughly. Uh, the microorganisms have changed. So what else changed? What else happened? Well, that's when we went from what they call the the hunter-gatherer to the Neolithic, which is farming, right? And that's what happened. So went to farming. What happened when we went to farming? We started eating grains. We started eating bread, potatoes, stuff like that. So we started eating carbs. About 10,000 years ago. All right. So that was one major change, and then it was our microbiome was pretty much. Oh, by the way, just the connection between the mouth and the gut microbiome is that the mouth has about 25, I forget, 25%, 26% of the of all the microorganisms on and in our body are in the mouth. 29% of them are in the gut. So together they make up more than 50% of our entire microbiome. Because you have trillions all over you. Every place you can think of. Your nose, you have a nasal biome, you have an oral biome, a vaginal biome, gastrointestinal biome. In your mouth, you have actually 5 different areas where there's, because of the anatomy and stuff, you have different areas where there's different microorganisms. They are everywhere. 44 species just on your forearm. And if they weren't there, you'd dry up and be, ugh. You need them. You don't want to wash them off. No, you don't want to get rid of the germs. There are no germs. Okay, germ is like disease. There's no germ. Germ implies this is bad. It's going to get me. They're not doing that. Parasites are going to get me. Parasites. That's a different story. Those are worms and certain protozoa. And our battle has always existed with those kinds of organisms, our battle is our defense is our immune system. But anyway, the second big change in our microflora was around the 1880s, okay, with the Industrial Revolution and machinery, where we started now in processing these carbohydrates into processed food. And we saw another big change when looking at the dental microbiota. And here's the thing that's really very important. So please listen to this one here. is that the microorganisms in the mouth that are associated with producing caries or cavities, all right, um, uh, were not found. We didn't have them prior to 10,000 years, and we only had a few of them until the Industrial Revolution. And then now we've got lots of it, right? Okay. Now the microorganisms that produce what's called periodontal problems, they call it disease, periodontal disease, but it's periodontal. Periodontal means around there, and that's why you lose your teeth. Are a different group of microorganisms, right? And so, and what has happened, most notably, is that we had a lot of a group of microorganisms called ruminicosis, ruminicosis. They've come with better names than this. Anyway, it's a long name, rumina something, Coccea. Who knows how to pronounce it? That's my professor. Anyway, these guys helped us. They did. I mean, if you saw what they did, you like if you could get some, you want them and you want them to kind of take over. Well, we've lost them, but we've got these other ones, right? So we've got P. gingivalis, right? We've got treponema, which is same kind of organism as syphilis, Lyme's, right? Got those things, and strep mutans, which all of those are not only do they just and we've lost the diversity. We used to have a much greater diversity of, in other words, the numbers of species, the numbers of families, of orders, the numbers of phyla, much more, and they were much more balanced, and we were like in exuberant health. I mean, no, I wasn't there that I remember, but I got to tell you, I don't think those people running around caught colds, what we call catching a cold. There's no way. Do you think elephants in the wild catch colds? Do you think lions catch colds? Do you think? No. There's that whole idea of catching a cold is the germ theory. You don't catch a cold. Your body's detoxing. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is all these microorganisms that are causing that produce acne, that produce all the problems all the CFCs that we're talking about, right, are associated with it. So there was a and that's really a whole lecture on biodentistry, but there are specific ratios of dysbiosis that are associated with acne. In other words, everyone's got acne. It's got this ratio, more of this, less of this, kind of a specific kind of, what do they call it? What's the word? Like a microbiota thumbnail. Okay, by the way, I never finished my explanation of terms. Microbiome refers to your genetics, right? So our genetics is not just our genetics. It's probably genetics of at least, must have at least what? A few million different species, 100 trillion in us. Anyway, we have a lot. So our real biome, in other words, our real genetics is extremely diverse. Anyway, but when we're talking about the organisms themselves, it's called the microbiota. Just terms. Microbiota versus microbiome. Oral microbiome. We use them interchangeably, but just so you know, they're not. It would be oral microbiota, meaning what are the actual organisms. All right. So now, and so frequent, intake of carbohydrates, right, such as disaccharides, monosaccharides, a lot of that we're getting, modified fructose, corn syrup, and all that stuff, produces what we know what happens with sugar when they get a hold of it and they ferment it. What do you produce? Acid. So you got increased acid. So you lose your alkalinity in your mouth, and that's part of why you get caries. because it breaks down the enamel from that. They didn't come in and do that. You gave them that food, and they didn't like it so much that these guys moved in, and because they like it, they love it, and you have to understand, it's not like we're gonna get, because 12,000 years ago it didn't happen. Now anyway. um, so so just so you understand that, and then and almost every chronically fermenting cell, wherever ovary is probably got strep mutans, which is a microorganism that likes to eat what we eat. They love potato chips. They love whatever it is, pasta. Yeah, all the stuff that's good, all the good stuff. Yeah, they love it too. Anyway, um, so I would say, here's what I would say to your son: is that, look, you can do this. You might lose your hair. You might not be able to function sexually, or you might not even care. Um, you might get some gut problems and all sorts of, so uh, and but you're disturbing you're causing more of an imbalance in your body. And the reason the doctor's going to be very careful and only do it 9 months and go slowly, why? Is because it's a dangerous drug. That's why. And you want to know how dangerous it is? You can't walk in and buy it. You can't walk. You got to have somebody who's licensed to do it. I don't need a prescription to buy water. Well, not yet, but anyway, I don't need a prescription to buy water or food, right? Okay, but I got to get a prescription from somewhere to get this stuff, whatever it is. All right, I think the word when you get licensed to do something, it's usually that you're getting administrative approval. You're being sanctioned to do something that would otherwise be illegal. What a world! How did we wind up here? Oh, that's right. Anyway, so, anyway, so that's what's happening. So the hormones. Okay, he's going to have hormones. I mean, he's 22, so he's it takes a few more years to really kind of get balanced. Our hormones, because they're kind of like all over the place. So that we can expect, but not everybody with 22 with the similar kind of hormones is having the problem he's having. So, so he's like, since diet affects the microbiome, which affects everything, all right, everything. Okay, so just the shift of having mainly the bacteroides, right, and they call it firmicutes, right? Firmicutes are two main large groups of microorganisms. Okay, so um, we went the wrong way. We used to have it so that we had more firmicutes and less bacteroides. Now it's changing, and that's what's causing it. And then we see how that's causing CFCs. So you got to tell your son that whatever, with the same thing that's really contributing to this, if he goes back to eating, because he's going to take the Accutane. Remember, at most they're going to keep him on 9 months, 12 months. Why? Because most people drop out because of the side effects. But then he's going to have to go back to eating the same way. But remember, those same organisms can cause CFCs. Those same organisms can cause cardiovascular. Not that they cause it. It's not that they cause it. It's just that they feed on stuff that results in that. Because they don't cause anything. They don't cause anything. Those kinds of bacteria, archaea, don't cause anything. They eat up. They're there to clean up the mess. Okay, so what are we finding for CFCs? Turns out that if you have a high fiber plant food, actually, you can look up the research. High fiber plant food, get rid of the processed food, and you eat a plant-based food. It looks like that really takes care of it and everything else in your life. So the problem is when we raise our children, we don't raise them knowing this. And if we do, okay, because what is your child going to eat? What's the baby going to eat? So I had a mother tell me one time, all she eats is nuggets. And I said, huh. She watched. She orders them online. How does she get them? How does she ever find out about nuggets in the first? What? So anyway, they're gonna eat what you feed them, right? And so if you're in the certain village up in China, right, you're gonna be feeding them monkey brain, live monkey brain. Okay. Your son doesn't eat live monkey brain. I'm assuming, right? Doesn't eat live monkey brain. Why? Why? Because you didn't feed him, and no one else did. So it's not that people like are born and say, "Oh God, I gotta have pizza," right? Right out of the womb. Forget the milk. I want pizza. No, it doesn't happen like that. All right. You got to learn all that stuff. All right. So anyway, so we don't teach our children really by what we say or anything like that. We teach them by who we are. Who we are is the lesson to the children. So they're gonna eat what we eat. The sins of the fathers are visited on the sons, the sins of the mothers are fathers. It goes on and on and on. So anyway, so all the research in acne comes down to plant-based, unprocessed foods. Can you imagine? Isn't that the same for high blood pressure? Isn't that the same for diabetes? Isn't that the same? Oh, is there a result? Fantastic. That's why. Is there a thread in there of sameness? Fantastic. Yay.
The live stream looks good on TikTok.
What is?
I saw it on my phone.
Yeah.
It looks fine.
Oh.
TikTok at least. It looks good.
Fantastic. It's a organic bean soup, aka coffee. Okay. But yeah, and they put organic soy milk. It's the only place that I found that's really good. Anyway, it turns out and I can't. And I know everyone that it's got questions is saying, I want you to shut up and get to my question. When are they going to know? What is all this? I'm not going to hear. Yeah, you do need to hear this. I'm telling you, you do need to hear this, and not just once, but maybe another billion times today, and then tomorrow. Why? Because we've got to change the way we think. We don't get things. Things don't get on us. We don't catch anything. There's no such thing. And you don't want to get rid of anything except your habits. That's all you want to get rid of. Okay, so anyway, so I'm telling you, that would work. And that not only would work, is he would see he's 22 now, so there's no way you're going to be able to teach him. There's no way. In fact, when a kid is 5, it's over. 4. Actually, you can tell a 2-year-old what to eat. It's a little harder telling a 3-year-old. And it's really hard telling a 4-year-old. So, by the time they're 10, 12, they're not going to, you did it. It's already done. It's done. Just like your genetics, you gave whatever genes you have, you gave it. It's done. You gave them their appetite. Okay, and that's like, so remember, 2 things if we love our children, since we love our children, you give them love. That's going to give them the confidence to go out and do what they need to do in life. It's their self-image. It's your love is them. You give them them. The second thing, health. And how do you give them health? By not teaching them habits, but by ensuring that they don't have habits that they need to break in order to be restored to health, so that they don't have habits that are getting in the way of being healthy. Do you understand that? But we do. And you got to do it early. You got to be planning on it. You got to be doing. You got to like be purposeful about this. 5 or 6 is too late. Now, if your kid's eating at 6 years old with a Western diet, what can you say? What can you say? You better get some insurance, medical insurance, dental insurance. You better do all that, right? Because we're planning on getting sick. Well, how about this? Why don't we just plan on staying healthy? How do we do that? Well, you know, there's 2 different ways. That's why we have the FDA. Okay, we know, you and I know, it's the Fraud and Deceit Association. However, they're known as the Food and Drug Administration. Why food and drug? Because they control the food and the drug. Is there a connection there? I don't know. It's not important, right? They take care of us. It's FDA approved. Right. When I hear something's FDA approved, I'm saying, oh no. Oh my God. I don't want that. Anyway, food and drug. You eat this food, you're going to need these drugs. You don't need them, but. So now, anyway, made my point, hopefully. This is from Michelle, and she said, you recommended a protocol of 3 months with 21 days on and 7 days off with different anti-parasites. I was wondering if you can include tricarbendazole in this, and what kind of milligrams. Can you alternate between albendazole, mebendazole, fenbendazole in the protocol, and what kind of milligrams in mebendazole, and 3 times a day? Oh, can you get a link to the live video sent to email? I'm gonna make sure that the people that do that for me, because I'm not sure what you're talking about. A live video that was sent about this. Anyway, let's just talk about these. Okay, we're talking about the benzimidazoles, which are a group of drugs that they call anti-helminthic. And of course, they can't say worm because it would be too easy. You understand? And you would know what they're talking about. They don't want you to know what they're talking about, so otherwise, what are you going to pay them for? So you got to remember words. Remember words, everything. Right? So now, I think he's got a problem. I think he's got some helminths. Oh my God, helminths? Yeah, helminth. So we're going to de-helminth you. Huh? Anyway. The mebendazole, fenbendazole, albendazole, tricarbendazole. There's like 7 or they all do basically the same thing except for this one here. The excuse me, the albendazole, mebendazole, fenbendazole. Their primary focus is, or primary thing that they do is they stop microtubules. Microtubules are kind of like the non-bony, non-hard skeleton of a cell, right? Like when our cells divide, they need those. That's how they do it. It's kind of like that's how they move. And other processes in the cells. And so these parasites, that's how they get around. That's how they eat, digest, everything like that. So if you block those, they're dead. If you block it in CFCs, they're dead too. So that's why these work with CFCs. Now, what's really strange is that the tricarbendazole gets tricarbendazole, yeah. It goes after the chitin, chitlin. I mean, chitin, which is that kind of protein skeleton that's on insects and it's on crustacean fish. Okay, it's chitin, and it's in mushrooms. All right, so it goes to there. So that's why it is used in a different. It's almost not a benzimidazole in that regard, because it's going after the chitin, which is good because the other ones don't. So if you've got a microorganism in you that has it's got a coat of chitin, you're not going to be able to get it with the fenbendazole, mebendazole, albendazole. All right. So, but it's the properties of going after the microtubules, and there's other things that it does that are very amazing, which is why Joe Tippins is still going. And you'll read every day on the internet about this. But we there's no studies or anything like that to show that the tricarbendazole does it, and it makes sense that it just might not, since it has a different um, mechanism, right? Okay, so whereas the remember they block the production synthesis of the microtubules. This blocks the synthesis production of chitin. Completely different things, right? But it's good in certain. There are certain parasites that if you can identify them, that you would want that for sure. Okay, so what is the okay? Now remember something. These the protocols are, if you look at the drug uh, package insert, you look at the drug package insert, and you read how to take it. It's it's the same thing you'll find if you're looking up research on recommendations, and it's usually not enough. It's not enough. Like it's crazy. Like there's a liver fluke that gets into it gets into the biliary system of the liver from eating certain food that they eat in Southeast Asia and China. That it wait, what was I talking about? Yeah. So the best, most direct and effective medication would be praziquantel. So when you read what it says take one pill a day for 3 days, or maybe at most 7 days. No, take 3 pills a day for 3 weeks, off 1 week, 3 weeks, off 1 week. So basically, it depends. If you said if Michelle, I don't know if you're talking about, you have like active parasites, you've seen them, or you're just saying, oh, you know what, I know everyone has parasites, I want to get rid of them. That's a different story. So I said, okay, 3 months, try 3 months, and then every year do 3 months or 1 month. But if you've got any other condition that you're not well, including CFCs, then you should do up to 10 or 12 cycles, right? With 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on. And remember, on the week off, and actually the whole time, you should be taking some supplements to maintain the health of your liver, and that is milk thistle, which produces chemicals called silymarin, silybindin. You can get those, or you can get the milk thistle. 500 milligrams 3 times a day. You want to get the alpha lipoic acid, 300 or 400 milligrams 3 times a day. You always want to take a B complex with that, or bifidobacterium, which is a fat soluble thiamine, which is B1, because that's what it gets used up. That's why it's not. What happens is when alpha lipoic acid is doing its job, it needs thiamine. It's using it, so you need to replace it. That's all. That's all that means. Right? Anyway, by doing those two, and you could also take there are other things for sure that you could take for your liver health. For example, licorice, not the candy in the store, but licorice is good for the liver. And there's many things, but those two specifically, by taking those, you want to keep your liver as healthy as possible. Okay, why? Not because because the liver is required to detoxify these drugs. They're drugs. I hate that. And so if you're taking, so we're taking, because why? We know that there's a biomass. There's not just a number of these guys in us. There's a biomass. We know that we've got to do, and their eggs are going to hatch. What the billions of eggs that are in there are going to hatch in 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks. So we got to do these cycles, running cycles, right? And so we got to use multiple drugs, and so using them all at once is going to put a burden on your liver. So you've got to be using these other things to protect it. So usually, so mebendazole, 500 milligrams 3 times a day, right? If the fenbendazole is 200, but however, okay. So mebendazole, fenbendazole, the average standard kind of dose is 222 milligrams 3 times a day. And not the way people think you take 4 days on or 2 days off, or no. So these guys, remember, if you don't kill them all, which you won't, but I mean, if you don't get most of them, you're going to disturb these colonies, and they're going to say, let's get out of here. And they're going to say, look, you see that pancreas? That looks pretty good. I mean, I think we'll be safer there. Well, the brain is pretty good. So you don't want them to migrate. So you want to get rid of them. So you do, okay. So this is the only situation where it's actually like a military thing. Could you build up your I don't even know how long TikTok was off. Why do they have me do that jigsaw puzzle? It's crazy. I don't understand it, but what? I guess they're afraid that someone was doing a selfie video and fell asleep or something, and they want. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So when you parasite, so you not only need that, but you need ivermectin, fenbendazole, or one of the benzimidazoles, niclosamide, and maybe praziquantel, depending on what's going on, and maybe it's ticarbendazole if depending. But I want to alert you all to something. Niclosamide we talk about often, I know I'm getting off the subject and I'm not answering someone's question, but I am probably answering other people's questions who haven't asked them. Niclosamide is one of the ones that we use, right? The anti-helminthics. It's now becoming like first line therapies for ovarian CFCs and a lot of them. If you read about it, you'll be blown away what it does. I mean, it's too effective to not use. But when you find out the dosages are really high. It's per kilogram compared to what we're doing, right? So we're talking about going up to 80, 90, 100 milligrams 3 times a day, or even more, 200 milligrams or even more, 500 milligrams, because they use that and it's helping to eliminate tumors. Niclosamide. So when we're talking about the doses that we're talking about, yeah, they're more than what are on the package insert. They're more than what's in the PDR, and they're more than what. And the pharmacist is going to go, oh no, I'm not going to fill that. I'm not going to lose my license. You go somewhere. Because I didn't take this job to help anybody. I took this job to take care of me. And you go to your doctor and they go, oh, I can't write that. Why can't you write that? Because I'm here for me. Don't you know that? Don't you know that I'm not working for you? Yeah. So if you have a doctor or a dentist or a pharmacist who puts themselves first, change. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Yes, these doses are higher than standard, but we don't even know because we've not explored it, except now with niclosamide, of what is there a real potential. As we notice, oh wow, Joe Tippins, wow. But is that the same for all of us, right? What if someone has more and has been diabetic for diabetic? In other words, they've had insulin resistance because their diet's been Western for a long time. They got, depending on it, do we need more? We don't know. We don't know because we haven't studied it. So don't worry about the dosages. Okay, but make sure you're taking care of your liver. And by the way, don't start any of these things until you've done a liver test, and find out where your enzymes are. Because if your liver enzymes are high for whatever reason, whether it's alcohol or fatty liver or a virus, hepatitis, what they call viruses, or for any reason, if you've got high liver enzymes, and now then you would have to have, under the guidance of someone who knows what they're doing, either a lesser dose and/or a decreased frequency, or you'd have to play with it a little bit because you want to you don't want to not get the effects, but you don't want to put a strain on your liver. And remember something, you can say, well, I'm going to take less of a dose because my liver's not clearing it that much. So am I going to have enough in my body? Yeah. Why? Because you didn't clear it. So even if I'm taking only half of what I was recommended to take, but my liver's not clearing, that means it's staying in the blood. So it's the same thing, my liver or my kidneys. So if I don't clear it, if I do clear it, then I need more. Okay. All right. All right. Now this is what? This is from Dr. Patrice. Rare leukemia. Okay, so there are standard leukemias and rare leukemias. Leukemia is Luke is the prefix that stands for white, and so a leukocyte, CYTE, right, is a suffix that always refers to cell, or it can be actually in the front of the word cyto, and as a prefix meaning cell. So cytology is the study of cells. And a leukocyte is a white cell, white blood cell. Okay, so anyway, emia means what? In the blood. So anemia means no blood. It should have been not anemia, because a in front of a word negates it. Can't think of a word right now, but I'm sure you know them. But anyway, and that's just how the English language is. So the A's will negate it. For example, the heart, the heart is, when it beats, it's called systole, right? It's a systolic motion, right? So when we measure blood pressure, we're measuring the in other words, the force of the contraction, which is called systole. Right? And that systole, right, is systolic function is the beating of the heart. So if you are asystole or asystolic, that means your line on the EKG is flat. Asystole. Anyway, so anemia. Emia means in the blood. So toxemia would mean toxins in the blood. So now leukemia is strange. It still doesn't say much. It just says you got white blood cells in your blood. Duh. But yeah. Anyway, but what it means is that you have more. But what's really happening, it's not just in the blood. It's because all the blood, all the the platelets, the white blood cells and the red blood cells are all produced in the bone marrow. That's where they come from, right? Unless you happen to be a fetus and early in life, then it's coming from your spleen as well, liver, but then it all pretty much winds up in the long bones. Which is why, by the way, if you live in, if you live on, what's that? I think it's the third planet from the sun. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. If you, unless you think, all right, old school. I'm not old school. I'm ancient school. No, not old school. Ancient school. Okay, anyway, so the third sphere from the sun. If you live planet Earth, uh, then what the hell? Anyway, I'll forget that one. Um, so these cells are made in the bone marrow. Oh, I know. Yeah, that's it. Um, right now on planet Earth, we are being exposed to all sorts of electromagnetic frequencies that we never were ever. We never ever. Oh, I don't know. Maybe before Sodom and Gomorrah. Maybe that's whatever. I don't know. Um, but it has changed everything, right? It affects every cell, everything. We'll talk about that one day. And what we know what happens on the cellular level is that it paralyzes the voltage gated calcium channels, and you get a ton of calcium in the cell. Blah, blah, blah. Well, we're not talking about that. But the thing is, it goes right through your skin, your clothes, your skin, and all that, right into your bone marrow, and it affects your production of your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and your platelets. It's being affected, right? It's affecting your immune system, your brain, all that stuff. Just be aware of that. So there's Faraday clothing you can buy. And that's what I was leading up to. And remember, somebody's going to do the research and let us know what's best. But anyway, so what I would recommend is get one that has where you wear it under your other clothing, but it's a t-shirt, and then at least of course your pelvis you want to protect, but you want to get long bones too of your legs. So if you could have like long, like pajama type pants. But then they have them like at Lambs is where I've gotten it. But you want to protect those long bones too from exposure because that's where you make most of your red blood cells and your white blood cells. Not most, all. Okay, so now, that's what a leukemia is. It's when one of the progenitors that's going to become whatever gets disturbed or gets somehow. Yeah, same thing that happens in the breast or the ovaries or anything, right? Remember, we're just talking about location now. So the location of breast CFCs obviously is the breast. Location of leukemias is in the bone marrow. So in the bone marrow, the cell at somewhere along its stage of going from being a primordial, can be anything cell, to becoming specifically a white blood. Somewhere in that stage, it gets inundated with toxins, and it can no longer do what it needs to do, and it starts to ferment. And it depends on where and along that way, it will determine the lineage that comes from it, right? Right? And so then you can have a lymphocytic leukemia, a myelocytic leukemia, right? They can be acute, they can be chronic. So that's how and acute and chronic are just terms that they use for talking about whether or not it's fast and aggressive or more indolent. Now, there are subtypes of the CLL and the ALL, there's chronic lymphocytic leukemia and acute lymphocytic leukemia. There are subtypes, and that's what when they talk about rare leukemias, that's what they're talking about, right? Right. So there's the T cell pro-lymphocytic leukemias, right? The B cell pro-lymphocytic leukemias, the juvenile myelomonocytic leukemias. These are considered rare leukemias. Rare in that they don't the process that disturbs the cell so that it kind of stops it from doing what it's doing and it has to start to ferment doesn't usually happen at these locations in the process, right? So it would have gone further down the line before it happened. That's why it's rare. It's not that the process is the same, right? The Warburg effect, right? So um, you know So I'm not sure which, because the question is just says rare leukemia. And I'm not sure what we're going to talk about here, but anyway, that's what they are. So they're no different. Don't be like mesmerized or excited or afraid of the fact when they say you've got a very rare disease. You know, what they're saying is that it's unusual, very rare for it to start here. What start? The same process as. So basically, you do the same thing. You treat it the same way. It's always the same. Get rid of all the toxins. Like, do it as if your life depended on it. Okay, that's how serious you want to get about it, right? So should I get a bio? Go find the best biological dentist, and you do that by networking and finding out and listening to us, and we tell you. So you got to do that. Then you got to do juice cleansing. You got to clean your colon, and get some help with colon therapist, lymphatics, all that stuff. Go to sleep, all the things you do, and then you do this 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. Juice. Clean the water in the aquarium. Remember all that interstitial fluid that we talked about that's surrounding the cells, which is the reason what that cells do what they do is because of that fluid. Clean it out, make it pristine again. And now all they got to do is be liver cells and kidney cells and all that. They don't have to be. They don't have to defend themselves from toxins. That's what we're talking about, right? You don't clean the water in the aquarium. It doesn't matter how much medicine you put in it. The fish will still be sick. Is that not a really clear concept? Yes, it is. So remember, you got an aquarium here, and you got a lot of fish, about 100 trillion of them. And when was the last time you cleaned the water? Right? I mean, most people, if you're an average person, never. But that same person would have changed their oil in their car 4 times a year, or 3 times a year, whatever. Because they know that if they don't change the oil, they can't expect high performance. But that doesn't apply to us, right? Anyway, cleaning out all that stuff and continually, all right? And then living a life that is compatible with your biological, psychological, and spiritual needs. In other words, satisfies them. So basically, when we get told that we've got this CFC going on, wherever it is, it's like a tap on the shoulder, and God's just saying, hey, you know what? It's showtime. It's showtime. And it's almost like an anointing. Not everybody, it's like an anointing. So now, you didn't really, like yesterday I could, I can do that, I can do this, but today I gotta do this, or do or die. It's what it is. And that's a beautiful thing, because humans, remember, we for some reason we came to the conclusion that we are the intelligent species. Of course, it was us that came to the conclusion, because that even the concept is an irrelevant concept. What does it mean? Okay, but anyway, we're intelligent, and chipmunks are not intelligent. Snakes, they're not intelligent. We are intelligent. So why is that chipmunk bearing? The stupid chipmunk. They're like burying their the nut in the soil over here. And then later on, what we find out is that if we want to get rid of all the phytates and the lignins that are not really in our favor, we got to sprout our seeds. How do we sprout them? We put them in water. Dumb chipmunks, right? Anyway, so we're the intelligent. So that's what we have concluded, that we're the intelligent ones. However, All organisms, they all do what they need to do, and only that. They don't do anything else. Why is that? Because they are under the auspices and direction of instinct. All right? And instinct is that divine web that connects all creatures to the wisdom of God. And if you don't like the word God, shall I try the word Dios? Or should I try the word Yahweh? Or should I try the word Allah? Or should I try the word Prachao? You know, many words. Or if you don't like that, how about nature? Nature is the manifestation of this intelligence. By the way, if you study nature and you really get into it and you want to look at, then you look at astrophysics, check out astrophysics. And you're going to find out, what do they know? They know that the known universe consists of, I think it's less than 1% of the universe. I mean, the physical thing that we see, including light and everything. The rest is what they call dark energy and dark matter, which they can't see or contact with. But you know what? By mathematics, it has to be there. Otherwise, this couldn't happen. So they know that there's something invisible controlling it all. But we're not going to call it God. We're going to call it dark matter and dark energy. Okay. So anyway, so anyway, let me try to get back to the point. Just to finish with the leukemia thing, it's like don't be. I sense in there because the word rare, because that gets people, you know. And like I've had people contact me and say, I've got a really rare Sagittarius going on. I go, huh? And it's only rare in location, but the situation is the same. Okay, please remember that. And every condition, I don't care what it is, heart, brain, the nervous system, inflammatory bowel, whatever it is, they're all just different fruits on the same tree that's got its roots in that same soil. And I don't care what kinds of fruits you got on it. Okay, and you can pick them off and it's not going to help. They're going to grow back. Just keep that in mind. It's really simple. But you've got to keep that in your mind, and you got to be aware of the words. All right, now, here's a lady named Marwa, and she says, I had triple positive breast CFCs, diagnosed, Diagnosed, they put a spell on her for a year. The blood tests are good. The hormonal markers are within normal range. And even very low CA125, CEA, and CA19-9 and CA15-3. Okay, so normally CA125 refers to ovarian, but we know that it's up with ascites, but usually not with breast. CEA is with breast. CA19-9 is usually with, you know, again, gastrointestinal things, not the breast, pancreas. But 15-3 is. So anyway, whatever. Those tumor markers are normal, right? And your liver, her liver tests are normal. And they say my CFC is very aggressive, but I feel good. I am active and have a very good build. No chemo, no x-ray, but now they found 2 small lesions in the liver. What should I do? Okay, all right. Well, Mara, first of all, congratulations on not letting them scare you to death. But they're starting, so you got to. I'm glad you're asking. Now, when we say aggressive, now I don't know why they're saying aggressive. Okay. Because everything you've said, nothing you've said has told me that it's aggressive. What is an aggressive tumor? What do they mean when they say it's aggressive? Well, really, what they're talking about is the doubling time. So the average doubling time of all tumors anywhere is 100 days, meaning that one cell will become 2 cells in 100 days. In another 100 days, 4 cells. In another 100, okay. So assuming we start out with 1 cell that gets becomes a fermenting cell and it doubles. It's going to take 10 years, 8 to 10 years to get a little enough to notice. Okay. So, if and why do we say, oh my, it's growing more and more and more? That's because when you don't see it and it's doubling, you don't know it. But so now if it's 1 gram and it doubles, it's 2 grams, and now it's 4. In other words, but it hasn't. If the doubling time doesn't change, then you don't have any more aggressiveness, and that's really how you determine whether or not something's aggressive. They also look. They grade them. They give them a grade by looking at the histology. In other words, looking at the microscopic anatomy. And the pathologist, says, and they can say there's a well differentiated, poorly differentiated, moderate. They just put these other terms on it. But that doesn't necessarily. You can have a poorly differentiated. We're supposed to be not good, but still, the doubling time is 100 days. What if it's 200 days? It's not going to be aggressive. Aggressive means it's moving, right? Okay. Now, you have 2 lesions, which you didn't have, I guess, for quite a while, and you didn't do chemo or X-ray or I guess radiotherapy. I don't know if you did surgery or not, but whatever. Anyway, so when they look at there are certain tumors are doubling, have their doubling rate is less than 100 days, right? And if you get down to about 60 days, then that's going to be pretty rapid. Now, breast has, I think how long we've been tracing it, but 80 years or whatever, it's always been about 180 days for breast, right? And then the thyroid, the papillary one, is long time. It can be every 5 years. So, I mean, yeah, right? So, lung, like 200 days, 230, depends, right? Normally. And that why? Not because it's a different thing in there. It's the environment in which it's in, right? So that tells you something. So suppose it was aggressive. Suppose the doubling time lessened. And we know that what's contributing to it is the fact that the microenvironment around it has changed so that it's feeding that process, right? So therefore, clearly, the thing we have to do is change that microenvironment. It's not, you don't even have to go to medical school for this. In fact, if you go to medical school, it's like you lose what's obvious. You lose common sense. But anyway, so what do I want to say? Now, so here's the conclusion that we have to come to if we have something. If we think we have some aggressive, things are becoming aggressive. In other words, we think it's growing faster. You got to be. It's hard to distinguish when tumors get large whether or not they fit the real term of aggressiveness, which means the doubling time is less, so that, or it's so big now that every time it doubles, it's noticeable. Either way, if it's that, either way, you got to do something. So I'm just saying. So, and you got to do the same thing. So now let's talk about what contributes to doubling time. And everybody wants to know this. Wherever you've got CFCs, you want to know this. What contributes to it? Well, number one is hypoxia, low oxygen. Number one. Okay. When you lose mitochondria, we talked about that. That's why it becomes a fermenting cell. It loses mitochondrial function like 30 to 40%. Why? What do the mitochondria do? They use oxygen. So the effect from losing mitochondria would be the same thing as if I turned down the oxygen. Okay. Now, So why? Because when you have a low oxygen, the tissues have low, they don't have enough oxygen that they need to sustain their energy to live. They produce, what comes out of them is a set of chemicals that correct it. It's a homeostatic response. It's an adaptive response. And the main one is called hypoxia inducible factor 1 alpha. What does that do? That stimulates new blood vessel growth because I got to get more blood so I can get more oxygen in here, and growth, tumor growth, or tissue growth. So you got a wound, that's how wounds heal. HIF1 alpha goes to work, you get tissue growth and blood vessel growth, right? That's it. But that's what happens in tumors. So in the tumor, since the blood vessels are like not normal, they don't have smooth muscle in them, so they're not influenced by the autonomic nervous system, right? Because the autonomic nervous system, one of the things it does is, I mean, that you got to realize how important the autonomic nervous system is. But one of the things it does is it closes and opens the little teeny arterioles that are blood going into tissues and organs, determining how much blood flow is going to an organ. So whether or not this organ gets more or less, that's a big, that's a big deal. That's what they're doing. And so the way that happens is by these the sympathetic system, right, which is a certain part of the nervous system, versus the parasympathetic. But anyway, so this is called the microvasculature, okay, and that is what determines blood flow. So now these CFCs, when they're growing new blood vessels, they're growing so fast because they're just trying to, it's out of hand. They don't have the smooth muscles, so they can't, and that's why that's why local hyperthermia works, because they can't constrict and dilate. Then you heat them up, they can't dissipate the heat the way we can. If we're sitting around and it's hot, our cheeks are going to get red and like that. We're going to sweat. All that stuff is because our blood vessels either dilate, for cold, hot. Anyway, so it cannot adapt. These cells can't adapt. So what happens to those blood vessels in the tumor is that they die easily. They break down and die. When they die, there's no blood, there's no oxygen, and what happens? They become necrotic and low oxygen, and then it stimulates HIF1 alpha, and that's how they work. That's how they grow. They grow based on that. Now, two things you need to know about HIF1 alpha. There's a set of enzymes that actually turn it off, right? Otherwise, it would go wild. And so we have a set of enzymes called deoxygenase enzymes. They just happen to need a ascorbate to work. Ascorbate is vitamin C. Heck, anybody first diagnosed, first finds out that they've got CFCs. If you went in and did a blood test, you'd find out that their HIF1 alpha was here and that their ascorbate level is here. Yeah. And our goal is to get the HIF1 alpha down here and the ascorbate level up here. Shuts it off, number one. Okay. Now, what else do we want to do? We want to make sure you're not anemic. If you're anemic, you don't have enough red blood cells. Right? You have low red blood cells. If you have low red blood cells, then you're not carrying enough oxygen. All right. And we know that can happen from the poisons they use and the radiation they use. All that stuff can cause it gets into the bone marrow and it decreases the production of the red blood cells. You're not making them anymore. Because remember, we turn them over. Remember, I don't know if you know, but red blood cells have only a life of 120 days and then they die. So they're turned over. So we're always making red blood cells, right? So anyway, so if the bone marrow get damaged in any way by chemo, EMF, radiotherapy, whatever, then we're making less, and we won't keep up with the turnover, and we'll have a slow decline in our blood count. If you're bleeding too much, if you have a tumor that's bleeding too much, or if you've got extremely heavy and long periods, menstrual periods, or or you might have a bleed going on in your colon that you're not aware of, or you are aware of. So bleeding, or you're not producing, or they're bursting. and that's called hemolysis, and they can burst from certain drugs. And if the cells are lacking in an enzyme called glucose 6 G6PD, right? Glucose 6 phosphodehydrogenase, right? Which is one of the main protecting enzymes in red blood cells. Because red blood cells are very different. We'll talk about them another day. Very different than other cells, but they depend on that. So if your G6PD is low, then they're gonna they can't deal with stress, and they burst, and that's what happens. So if your G6PD is low, you cannot get ozone, and you cannot get high dose vitamin C. That's not true, but that's what we think. I've learned that you can, but you got to do it very differently. There's a protocol for doing it. Anyway, so one of the ways that our bone marrow learns to make more red blood cells is because the kidneys, they've got these little arteries, as the blood's going into the kidney, it's got these volume sensors. Do you realize all this stuff just happened randomly? We have volume receptors in our arteries that are going to send a signal to make a hormone called erythropoietin. Erythro it just means red. Like leuco is white, erythro is red. Erythropoietin means to stimulate, to do. So stimulate red blood cells. So erythropoietin produced by the kidneys, in normal physiology, sends a signal, because who's got the receptor for erythropoietin? Right? Not my nose, not my eyelids, not my toes. Bone marrow. And then what happens? The bone marrow gets stimulated, and they start to make more red blood cells. Not white blood cells, red blood cells. Not platelets, red blood cells. So someone who's on dialysis, they have kidney failure, is not making any erythropoietin, so they have to get erythropoietin shots. Well, in our situation too, where we're in trouble, and we don't want to get a transfusion because we're concerned about the safety of the blood supply. I don't know why we'd be concerned about that, but just to say we're paranoid. We're a paranoid individual, and we happen to think there might be something that you don't want in the blood supply. So what do we want to do? How do we increase it? You're anemic. All that stuff. First of all, you can stop the bleeding if there's bleeding. And if you don't, it won't work. But to keep things up, what you want to do is stimulate the bone marrow to make more. How do you do that? You got low iron because you don't have enough hemoglobin. If you're bleeding, you're going to have low iron. And so what do you do? So what does the bone marrow need to make red blood cells? I mean, it needs a lot of stuff, but you can't, but it's getting the normal nutrients that you're providing. But the two main things is iron, because that's what sits at the middle of the hemoglobin molecule that holds the oxygen, and the erythropoietin that tells the bone marrow to get going. Okay, so we can do that. Now, the problem is that CFCs have 15 times more receptors for iron. In other words, transferrin receptors. Transferrin is the protein that carries iron, because you can't trust iron, can't leave it on its own, causes big problems, right? Got to be carried, escorted. Most things have things, but iron especially. So it's carried by transferrin, and then there's transferrin receptors on the cells, and they get it in. And the transferrin is carrying iron in the form of ferric 3+. Anyway, they have 15 times more. They have a lot of them because they need iron to double and grow. So if you take an iron supplement or you get intravenous iron, guess who gets it? CFCs. The other cells get a little bit, but they're going to get it first. Now, if you, and this, this just made sense to me. I mean, I don't, and unfortunately, I have never met another doctor that's doing this. So anyway, if you got this problem, tell your doctor to do it. and that is normally when we give erythropoietin to someone to stimulate their bone marrow, you give it subcutaneously and you let it get absorbed. And the maximum dose is 40,000 units. 40,000 units. You get that? So what I say is, we use it's so the way I do it is, I get intravenous iron, which in the I don't know, gang, yun like kapao gang, tini, hongi, excuse me, 1 second. Jim, my all right. Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, so erythropoietin. So here's what we do. Here's how you correct it. This is the way you can correct anemia without getting a blood transfusion. But listen, it doesn't always work because you may have had a lot of chemo or been overexposed to radiate. There are reasons why it doesn't work, but it's the best chance you have to correct it, right? Remember, if you're bleeding, you got to stop the bleeding. If you're having hemolysis where it's bursting, you got to figure out why that's happening and stop that. So just saying that someone's anemic, say, well, they need iron. No, well, not necessarily. We don't know what they need. We got to figure it out. Right? You got to figure out what causes it. That's what a well-trained doctor should do, would do. But so we're in a situation now, and we got to do. And the person doesn't want to. We've stopped. There's no bleeding. There's no hemolysis, and we've got to. They don't want a blood transfusion. So, intravenous instead of subcutaneous erythropoietin IV, because you want it to go there now. Subcutaneous means it's going to be absorbed over the next 48 hours or whatever, slowly, which under normal circumstances is fine. But in this situation, because you're going to give the iron IV, and if you give the iron IV and you haven't done that, it's going to all go to the CFCs. So you give that IV, and bone marrow's like saying, it's sending out signals saying, I'm over here, right? And now you give the iron, the Venifer IV, over an hour. 100 milligrams over an hour. 40,000 units of erythropoietin. And your doctor has never heard of this. Anyway, any doctors out there who do this? Let me know. Could it be?
Still working?
Yeah.
I'm still alive?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So are there any doctors out there doing that? No. Hey, well, what? Oh, I thought it said 7 a.m. What time is it? Oh, okay. So, but anyway, they're not doing it. People just don't do it. I don't know why, but they don't do it. I guess they never thought about it. Why didn't they think about it? I don't know. Oh wait, where is it? Well, I want to be able to see. Can I see? Sorry. Okay, so I don't know. I can't see any. I don't see any messages. I don't know how to work it. Anyway, I'm still on, right? Everybody, okay. I hope I didn't mess it up. Okay. Anyway, I should like not touch these things. Okay, so So we were talking about the aggressiveness of tumors, and one thing we want to do is slow down. We got to, if we can slow down that doubling time, how about to every 5 years, 10 years? Remember, if it's doing it every 100 days and you have one cell, it's going to take 10 years for you to find a little spot, lump, not a lump, even a nodule, right? Imagine if it's doing it every 5 to 10 years. It's basically not happening. All right, so you got to modify the environment around it, and one of the ways you do that is make sure that there is lots of oxygen and it's being delivered to where it needs to get to, and that's a whole other thing. One of the most important and overlooked ways of oxygen getting from the blood into the cell is by having omega-6, not 3, omega-6 in your cellular membranes. Okay, they kind of act like insulin does to what insulin is to glucose, omega-6 is to oxygen. So it's very important. There's other stuff, 2,3-DPG and stuff like that, but I'm not going there. Where are we? Here. Okay. So we talked about the ascorbate, the vitamin C, remember? Mm-hmm. And that's why, by the way, because they need iron, that's why your iron goes low. Whenever you have CFCs, you're going to find your iron goes low and your ferritin goes up. Ferritin is how you store iron, right? Why is it going up? Because your body wants to store it to prevent it from going into the CFC. So you wind up with a high ferritin and low iron, which is kind of, and one of their words, pathognomonic. It's kind of like if your ferritin is 5 times iron or more, there's CFCs going on, unless an acute event, because ferritin will go up in an acute situation. But let's see, a persistent, consistent elevation, you got to look at that. Okay. Now the other big deal is for your dysbiosis, your gut, your dysbiosis, right? So why am I saying that? Because the microorganisms, depending on who they are, but they can produce actually carcinogenic metabolites. Their metabolism, their metabolic byproducts actually stimulate tumor growth. All right. It's almost like what the parasites do. They modify the immune system's ability to eliminate them. And one of the major things that has to happen is that a tumor cell has to become a stem cell again. Isn't that great? They can. We can't. Why can't we say, okay, I want to be 18 again? Anyway, so that's called epithelial to mesenchymal transition. That's what it's called, EMT. Anyway, that's what they do. They can. So, if they increase that, which they do, these having a dysbiosis, certain microorganisms can increase your EMT. So that means you're going to be able to grow quicker, right? Okay. Now, and then the other thing is that these microorganisms, if you have the ones that are in that are not really on our side, and it's not that they're on our side, just that their activities are not compatible with our activities and our requirements, so that they just conflict, right? It's not that they're after us or anything like that, but they actually can get in there and feed the tumor, make it, yeah, okay. So now the microbiota that we know that is pretty specific to CFCs, right? Or the Bacteroides, like we talked about, right? The Protobacteria, the Faecalibacterium, Rosaburia, and the Clostridium. These are all been kind of, they're also needed. They're part of we need them. We just don't need them in the proportions we have them. So everybody has all the same microorganisms. I mean, unless you're going for a bone marrow transplant and they completely wipe them all out. But other than that, Well, they wipe out your white cells, but yeah. If you've been on antibiotics a long time, anyway. So we all have the same, basically the same species. It's just that we have more of some and less of others, right? That's why it's called dysbiosis. Dis means imbalance. It's just like men and women have the same hormones, exactly the same hormones, but in different proportions. And that's this that's this thing. That's how we can look at what they call secondary sexual uh, characteristics, right? Are due to that hormones, right? So that's why people that are going through uh, modification of their phenotype, right? Because they weren't happy with their phenotype, and their phenotype being either male or female, they didn't weren't happy with it, so they want to change their phenotype. What they do is they one of the things that's necessary is to try to change around the proportion of the hormones. This much testosterone, this much estrogen, or whatever that fits with that. Okay, so same thing with biosis, our microorganisms and our and hormones. So therefore, restoring a healthy gut biome. And how do you do that? How do you get them healthy? Because they're really, really important, right? And what I'm saying, one of the things that's very interesting about CFCs is that there's a specific sort of a set. So, like people who have breast, I'm not going to say, you know what they're saying in the scientific literature now? It just, I can't believe they just adopted it. They're saying people who are assigned female at birth instead of saying females. Yeah. Anyway, so but for breast CFCs, I've had actually in my 30, 40 years of doing this, I've only had like less than 5 men, but they had the same thing. So anyway, but what we notice is that they have the same. What do they call it? They call it like it's like a fingerprint or same. I don't know, same signature, whatever. Uh, all people with breast CFCs, right? So right, they're low in their in their bifidobacter bacterium and their lactobacillus, and as a result, what their job is, one of their jobs those organisms do is they like to eat certain things and produce short chain fatty acids that we need. So breast, we find out they don't have those, but they do. But in the breast they do have an increase in staph aureus, staphylococcal aureus. So they have low on that, and that, right? Whereas in esophageal, it's different, right? So in esophageal, we'll see they have more enterobacter, right? And but they also have the low bifidobacter and the fecalibacterium, right? And then colorectal, right? They have an increase in the fusobacterium, the enterotoxigenic bacteria, the E. coli. So they have that, and then they have, again, what do they have? Low in the bifidobacter and the fecal. Now, that seems to be even in gastric. When we look at gastric, right? Very same thing. But they all pretty much have low on the bifidobacter and lactobacilli, and then they have other ones that will kind of define the signature of that particular CFC. So think about it. What could you do? Fecal transplants, and I don't know why we're not doing that, because that's a quick way to change everything. It's not going to last if you're not feeding them, of course, but at least a quick way, because we know ulcerative colitis. If you do a fecal transplant, gone. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know why this is not being explored more, but yeah. So that's how it works. So the bifidobacter. Now, um, what's very interesting is that Bifidobacter bifidus is probably the main player when we're first born, right? And if you have a vaginal delivery, right, not a C-section. Anyway, it's the main one, but it's really, really, really important because what it does is it produces something called butyrate or butyric acid, butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that's very important. And guess what? You know, there are people. Now, I want you to try to understand this. There are certain people in the world that were injected with certain different things, and one of the things we noticed about all of those that were injected is that they lost their bifidobacter bifidus. What? Can that can, can that be? Yeah. How did that happen? I don't know. It's just a coincidence. This is another one of those incredible coincidences. Um, so um, now, remember, what does it mean if you've got all this dysbiosis? Okay, it's what has it done? It's modified your immune system. It's not working very well. It's modified the nutrients, so now you're feeding the CFCs more. It's changed. It even modifies the epigenetic, the epigenetic way your genes are being expressed, and it just supports the CFCs if you have the wrong microbiome. So, how important is it what you eat? I mean, is that a question? And guess what? What we find, the microbiome is disturbed. Now, I'm okay. Okay. When you look at all the studies of looking at probiotics versus prebiotics, right? So a probiotic is giving yourselves live bacteria. The prebiotics is giving them the food that they need to survive. And the reason you have to give prebiotics is because we're not eating the food they need to survive. So we got to get so all the studies show that the prebiotics are more effective than the probiotics. Why? Because remember, we already have every organism in us in the wrong proportions. So now if we start feeding the ones we need, they're going to grow. That's why prebiotics work. And just taking probiotics without prebiotics, they might hang around for a couple of generations, but they're not going to stay. They won't colonize for a long time. Okay, so it's just the way it is. So that's why really in the studies they're saying prebiotics and probiotics because they don't tell people what to eat. But for those who have looked it up, who have done the research for it and studied it, they find out that when how do you increase bifidobacter and lactobacilli? Well, if you look at all the research, you've studied it real hard, you're going to find out that they need fiber. Fiber is what? Cellulose. I mean, there's two kinds. There's soluble and insoluble bit. Okay, so they need the insoluble and insoluble. It comes from plants, right? Fiber does not come from animals. Well, I don't know. I guess you could eat a fibrous piece of steak, right? What is that? You look at it. What is it? It's not cartilage. It's what they call it, gristle. I don't know. Anyway, I guess you get fiber that way, but that's not really fiber because that will be broken down. It's not fiber. All right. So anyway, so the prebiotics that these produce. So in other words, those. It turns out that a wide range of rich raw plant food. What? Such as fruits, veggies, even whole grains that are sprouted, nuts, seeds, and kimchi, fermented foods, yes. Natto, sauerkraut, coconut yogurt. Anyway, and then fiber-rich foods like onions, garlic, even bananas have a lot. This will stimulate bifidobacter. So what they have is these, in addition to the fiber, they have all these polyphenols, which are broken down and made into stuff that we need. Really, very important, right? Now, there was a study or several, multiple studies where they showed that a animal meat muscle. Usually people are eating muscle. They don't usually eat organs. Sometimes they do, but mostly people eat muscle. But anyway, so eating an animal corpse in any part of the corpse turns out. Now I know you might not want to hear this. So if you don't want to hear it, close your ears. Go. Okay, do that right now. I'm going to tell you what it says. Okay, the studies show all of them. Put them together, and they say that a diet rich in meat has a negative impact on the gut microbiome, leading to imbalances called dysbiosis that will compromise immune function. What? It can't be. I mean, I'm a carnivore. What can I say? What can I say? It's like people. I think there are people out there that are actually trying to convince me that there's no gravity to it. I haven't even begun to listen to those arguments because, whoa. That's like saying someone's trying to tell me, do you know that furniture can actually procreate? Furniture can reproduce itself? Okay, let's not talk about that. If that's true, I don't want to know. So what else? What else do we know that affects our gut biome negatively? Dairy. Can you believe it? Not during the weaning and not during the part of your life when you need it. And when do you need it? Until your body has doubled in size and weight, right? And that's different for different species. And that's the purpose of milk. And once you get to that point, all mammals, not all animals, all mammals, because lizards don't breastfeed that often. Yeah. It's hard to fish. Never saw a fish breastfeed, but for sure. Okay, so the mammals, but when they're done, it's not like, all right, honey, you can come Tuesdays or Friday nights. No, it's over, right? Okay. Why is it over? Because now it becomes dangerous. Right. And then they found out also this other like really thing that we didn't want to hear, and that is that I'm sorry to say the vegetarian diet promotes a healthy microbiome. It hurts to say it, but what can I say? Oh, by the way, if anybody says I don't believe that, because I see some people get really okay. So I got an idea. Whoever out there says what I just said is not true, because I'm always ready to learn. Send me the research. And look it all over yourself. Look it all over. Do the research. PubMed. Don't go to Google Scholar. It's a CIA Scholar. Don't go to CIA Scholar. Go to PubMed or that's the best. Go there. Okay, and then just type in what you're looking for, right? And you'll find stuff like that. All right. So then, and so they don't do this kind of research with humans. It's too dangerous. No, because they think it's too dangerous, but also that they don't want to know that you can actually change your health with diet, and then they won't be able to sell their drugs. So who's going to support that research? No one. Okay, but anyway, but they do it in veterinary. So in veterinary medicine, they've looked at wild chimpanzees who are eating a wild diet, which is uncooked, versus chimpanzees who are domesticated and eating cooked. What do they find? Can you believe it that they find that the wild chimpanzees have like we had 11,000 years ago, a lot of diversity. All the healthy ones, all the really good ones, and they got a really strong biome. And the chimpanzees who are domesticated, they have kind of like us. So anyway, now anyway, let's go beyond that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we got all that. So what I'm saying to you, Marwa, is forget what they said and do what I'm saying, and just do it anyway. And it's going to stop. There's no it. It's a process that you can actually have an effect on. I mean, you are the one who can affect it. Okay, so Mary says thoughts on low dose naltrexone for breast CFCs spread to the bones. How long and what strength? Okay, so this should be a question that you all want to ask about naltrexone. Okay, low dose naltrexone. Naltrexone is uh, an opiate antagonist. So, how do opiates work? Opiates like heroin, morphine, opium, dilaudid, oxycodone, Vicodin, I mean, all of them, codeine. How do they work? They bind to an opiate receptor. So the cell has to have a receptor, otherwise it has nothing. Binds it, and then that causes an effect on the cell. Now, what naltrexone does is it binds. So the main, there are several different opiate receptors, but the one that that is used for pain, the one that binds that's going to help people with pain is called the mu receptor. And so naltrexone binds to it and doesn't do anything. It's just kind of like tamoxifen. Tamoxifen does bad things, but this doesn't. It just binds to it and blocks it. It does other things too, but I mean, the point is it blocks it, and so we use that in the emergency room when someone comes in and they're unconscious. So first thing we give them is some IV glucose to see if they took too much insulin, and next time we give them is what they call Narcan or naltrexone IV. And if it was a heroin overdose or something like that, they immediately wake up. Immediately, like where am I? What happened? So, but anyway, that's standard high doses. Okay. Now, it turns out that CFCs were found out that they have opiate receptors. Now, opiate receptors, we think of them as pain, but they do many other things. They're on They're a lot of our immune cells. Not all. They all have different opiate receptors, which have different effects on them. But it's a different receptor, right? Because we talked about the mu receptor for the pain. There's several other receptors. Okay, so anyway, the low dose naltrexone actually. So what happens is low dose naltrexone is that it stimulates just enough that it increases the immunity big time. It's an immune enhancing, and it's been found because the opiate receptors are actually overexpressed, meaning there's more than with breast CFCs, with pancreatic CFCs, colon CFCs, esophageal CFC, prostate, stomach, lung, ovary. Okay, they all have more of these. Why? Because they need them to get certain substances. But taking advantage of that by giving the naltrexone low dose, you can stimulate the receptor that we want to, that will stimulate the immune system, and we can actually see these things shrink. So the answer is yes. Now, by the way, I just want to remind you also. Okay, so what did I just say? What did I just say? TikTok just told me that it's been restricted. To something. I don't know what I said. Anyway, I'm sorry for what I said. I promise never to say it again. I do. I didn't mean it. He made me do it. It wasn't me. He made me do it. Okay. Okay, there you go. Anyway, this is a very important thing, and then I'll stop because it's getting late. I've talked to you about peptides where you need to wake up the immune system. We got to wake up the immune system because it gets paralyzed by the tumor microenvironment, right? So that's why we take thymosin alpha-1 to increase our T cell production, and we want to get methionine and enkephalin, which is a 5 amino acid peptide produced by different cells and the adrenal glands and stuff like that. All right. Well, metenkephalin is also called opioid growth factor, right? And it turns out that it corrects immune dysfunction. That's kind of its job. Well, but it's an opioid growth factor. That's what it is, okay? Because it's part of the opioid family. So enkephalin, which is a large molecule, it breaks down into different kinds of other, what they call endorphins, which are endogenous morphines, where they got the word. But anyway, so that's why this Met5 is so important. So it's a, but this is how the low dose naltrexone works too. The low dose naltrexone actually stimulates that as well. But still, you want the other one too. The other big one, just for you all to remember. I mean, I want to go into a whole talk about these things. But the other one is interleukin 2, IL-2. If you can get IL-2, which is expensive and crazy, ridiculously expensive, and hard to get doctors to write prescriptions. It's an injection, but IL-2 and TA1, thymosin alpha 1, and this, the Met5, methionine enkephalin, and melatonin. The only other things that I would maybe add is the GHK, which is another peptide, and the epithalin. You don't really have it, but you want to do it all. If you're doing all those, your immune system is just going to go, right? I'm telling you. When they talk about immunotherapy, they're not talking about that. They're talking about PD-1 and PD-L1 blockers, checkpoint inhibitors. They're talking about, you know what, if we just block this one thing. I know there's 37 sextillion chemical reactions going on every second. However, I think if we just block this one, we're going to fix everything, right? So that's a combination of audacity and ignorance. Maybe more ignorance than audacity, however, but you know. It just doesn't work. By the way. Anyway, but if you do all the things that LDN does, low dose naltrexone, you say, so what's the dose? Anywhere from 3 milligrams to 4.5 milligrams. One. But anyway, I would start at maybe 3 per night before bed. That's it, once. It's not going to do anything. Start out with 4.5. I've never seen a problem. So anyway, but that is a big deal. And you can even take those low doses, even if you're on an opiate, which you got to get off anyway. We got to change that to cannabis, because cannabis rectally high dose can get you off of that. It can take care of the pain, so you don't have to take opiates. Okay. So, but anyway, if you go into the details of what all this does, so the answer is absolutely yes, yes, yes. Okay. And then we want to get IL-2. We want to get melatonin. We want to get IL-2, melatonin, the TA1, and the Met5. If you have those, your immune system is great. And ALA, alpha lipoic acid. That's going to do it. All right. Anyway, see you next week. Sweaty Cop. And I think I went over again. Did I go over? Where are we? There we are. Okay. All right. Sweaty Cop.